councilors would take their seats, please. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for the Newberg City Council business session, June 5, 2017. I appreciate your patience. We had some other business we needed to take care of. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Mayor, all present, duly noted.
Thank you. Would you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Manager's report, please.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Joe Hannon, your City Manager. So I've emailed you and the two press the bullet points of my update, so I'll just go through them quickly. Probably one of the first one that's of interest actually is something that happens tomorrow as part of the update. So the mayor and I are speaking at City Club, and that's at the Cultural Center at noon, and so I think there's still space there if anyone would like to attend there. And at that time I will be telling the public what staff's recommendation is to the council regarding TVF&R and annexation that will come for your decision on the 19th of June. So I'm going to do that tomorrow at noon. The last 2 weeks, it's actually 3 weeks since the last meeting, there's been a lot that's gone on. First, we coordinated and scheduled a joint meeting with some agenda ideas of a meeting between the City Council and CPRD in September. Excuse me. And that talks about a whole series of things, everything from a countywide trail system to items that we can do in partnership, and also some joint IT partnerships, but about 8 or 9 items for a council work session here. And this was following up on a commitment that when they had talked about SDCs at the pool, we asked, let's get together before issues come up so that the two boards, so that the two groups of elected officials can talk about common interest and challenge. We also met with state and federal surplus staff, and these are some kind of breaking newses and some real exciting, but we have asked state and federal surplus staff for permission for the city to receive at either no cost or very low service fees emergency supplies and equipment. And this runs from cargo containers to cots to trauma kits for medical. And so we've asked the federal government and the state for that. We've gotten an indication back, not in writing, but indication that they are supportive of this. And this can then become the basis of how we pre-position emergency medical and disaster response supplies in all or part of the 35 churches in town. We also met just before this meeting with the Department of Defense, the emergency preparedness liaison to Washington and Oregon, and they were supportive and said, go for it, and if you need any help, that then they would jump in at that also. We met with Chief Dyke and Chief Holman of TVF&R, and we talked about a potential financial partnership on the communication upgrade that we're looking at over the next 3 years, about help with potentially paying for maybe part of the antenna work. So that's been interest, and about the future of the fire stations. While all the time stating, as everyone has stated in public, that there is no intent that the fire stations not continue to operate, and that they will always operate, whether it's in an annexation, always. They will operate, nothing is always, but they will continue as fire stations if there's an annexation or if we retain or bring back the fire department. Attended the 7th and 8th training class. That's just interesting about becoming a community emergency respond person. So Shelley and I are both doing that. And so we're down to the last class. But one of the things that came out of there is looking at options for a greater integration of CERT volunteers into our public safety response system. So met with the police department, we're looking where that go. We also discussed the idea of the Oregon Electric Railway Association placing and operating a trolley in Newberg, as opposed to us just going out and purchasing one or leasing one. So we're exploring that with their board members. We submitted a letter to the FAA answering some preliminary questions that they had about the feasibility of an airport development rights purchase agreement. That's scheduled to come back to the council hopefully with these answers, and then a discussion of council whether you're choosing to go with that application in, I believe, August. So, thanks. We met with the chairperson and secretary of the Newberg Animal Shelter, and this was to clarify some questions about shelter operations and our existing lease, and also discuss responses from the community to pending changes in the Yamhill County's Sheriff Dog Control Program as they basically get out of that business of how do we react to that and work through the issues. We also worked on a program for legal coverage insurance for the police command staff and our reserves. And so we're going down the road of potentially covering our command staff, where right now our officers on the street have the coverage, and our reserves do not have that. So we want to make that available. Attended a supervisor's training offered by the city's HR director, Anna Lee, about just preparing us better supervisors going throughout the whole staff. Attended the mayor's cabinet, attended the bypass committee, meeting the Newberg bypass, attended weekly department director updates, and these are one-on-ones with department directors for finance, public works, HR, and IT. We also met with the police department, IT, and finance, and Motorola, and this is discussed the options on our radio upgrades. So this could be equipment for our officers on the streets and also in the dispatch center. We discussed enhancements and improvements to our existing Code Red notification program with police, IT, and community engagement. And this is the one where we notify people, where we now believe that we have an opportunity to use the Code Red system for notification of the public for things that are over and above just a disaster for the same price. So we're working with the company to do that. Shelley and I served as Yamhill County ballot couriers and monitors for our last special election in Newberg. Picked up litter on the highway between Newberg and Dundee, so doing our part with that. We had the summer public works operations barbecue, which would really encourage council members in the future of take that opportunity to meet with staff. We met with Boca Vista staff and owners, and this was staff to staff as opposed to elected officials, and just worked through some issues. Met with a dozen Mid-Willamette city managers to discuss the legislative session, including 2 recent gas tax elections and 2 that may be coming up in the future. So there's maybe a slight change in some thinking about gas taxes, because 2 of them did pass this time, as opposed to 9 out of 10 that failed in the last fall. Attended the TBF and R's open house, the Old Fashioned Festival Committee, meetings with that. Attended the Yamhill County City's Dinner in Willamina. Discussed Anvil Academy's donated assistance to us in creating a camellia stencil that we'll use for the Old Fashioned Festival parade route. Then actually took a 3-day vacation to visit my daughter in Victoria. So,
Your wife was there.
No, my wife is in D.C. with our possible, hopefully, new grandchild. So Mr. Mayor.
Question, comments? Councilman
On
McKinney.
On Code Red, how long does it take that system to notify the citizens of Newberg about something terrible?
Well, I want to say instantaneous. I'm looking for an expert of one of our police or something. Anybody else able to answer it better than me? I mean, once we go out, it goes to all of it, but Dan Denici may even know. I don't know. I'll find.
Yeah, I could weigh in on that. It only takes as long as for someone to enter it into the dispatch system. So actually, it takes longer to decide the language to put out, and then what's put out, it just goes right through.
So it's disseminated very, very
Yeah.
rapidly.
Yes,
Once the button's pushed, people know.
that's right.
And we have the ability to do it by neighborhoods.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Any others? Thank you, appreciate it very much. We move into the area of public comments, and this is a section of the agenda that provides an opportunity for citizens to address the council on members relevant to the city and regarding items on the consent calendar, but not other specific items on the agenda for council deliberation. I'd like to remind all citizens who have signed up to speak to the council that each speaker will have 5 minutes to address the council. Also, collected comments by an individual under public comments will be limited to 5 minutes. It is asked that any request for information or actions on the part of the council that they be made in writing and presented to our city recorder, who will forward them to myself and to the council, that may assign the request to appropriate staff members or employees for review and response. These responses will be reviewed by the mayor and the council before sending the request. The responses will either come by email or by USPS. And we also request good decorum on the part of those that are attending. And with that, I'm going to call on Mr. Dave Adams. If you would come forward. And the silver button on the right turns the mic on. Please give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
I'll try not to take that long. Dave Adams, KLYC Radio. This kind of dovetails with your Code Red information you were talking about earlier. We have started a new company called the Oregon Pulse Network. We've started a number of internet radio stations. One of them is called the Newberg Pulse, the heartbeat of Newberg. We started an online radio station dedicated exclusively to Newberg News and Information. It plays the same music that we do on KLYC broadcast. One of the things we're also going to be doing is dedicating an audio stream channel to each city in Yamhill County. There's about 10 of them. So any parks department, anybody in the community can use it. We can also give access to city managers or public works folks. So you can record a message on your phone, upload it, and within 3 minutes it's playing on the system. So that's also something that we're doing. So one of our goals is to use the internet a lot and marry KLYC broadcast, but also with new technology to engage, inform, entertain our audience. It's pretty exciting times. There's an old saying, it's the best of times and the worst of times. For media today, the game has changed. And so what we're trying to do is embrace this new technology and engage our audience and give them something that they're wanting. Obviously, we'll have advertising on these things as well. So I won't go a lot into it. I'm sure you probably have questions we can talk about later. But that's, you have your own online radio station called the Newberg Pulse. It's on the air right now, or online right now. Okay?
Any questions or comments for Mr. Adams? None appearing? Thank you, Dave, appreciate it. Mr. Robert Suppy.
Good evening, and thank you. There was something to be passed out to you, a list of some signatures. I don't know if you've gotten them already. I'm before you tonight with regard to the issue of the TVF&R annexation and its impact on taxation. As you know, if Newberg annexes into the TVF&R district, Newberg will lose the obligation of funding fire services, but will retain the authority to continue to levy the $1.88 per thousand taxes it presently uses to fund these services. Many Newberg citizens would like to see that authority removed. You should have received a copy of a petition earlier today from the city recorder. I've also handed out a list of individuals who have signed that petition. I had originally intended to make this simply a personal request from myself as a local resident. As I talked to local people about the issue, I kept getting asked how they could support what I was doing. With little effort, I received the signatures you have listed before you. You should recognize many of the names. There's a former Newberg mayor, 5 former city council members, a former planning commission member, a former president of the Chamber of Commerce, and others. The petition requests that you direct staff to come back to you with a request for council action to put an amendment to the city charter on the ballot. The charter amendment approach is being requested as it is the only practical way to put the authority to collect any of the $1.88 in the hands of the voters. I want to emphasize that the request tonight is only to have the issue brought before you. If you think this is a serious enough issue, then it should be easy to decide to have this formally heard at a later meeting. I also want to emphasize what this request does not represent. It is not a referendum on whether or not the annexation should occur, nor is it about what should happen with the city assets. Lastly, it does not in any way address whether or not there should be a binding public vote about the annexation itself. The request is only about the taxation issue that would occur when and if the annexation happens. I think that voters spoke loudly and clearly when they passed ballot measures 47 and 50 that set up our current property tax limitations. While I won't argue that keeping the $1.88 is a violation of those measures, I think it's easy to see that it is contrary to the spirit of those measures. By agreeing to have a formal hearing on the charter amendment, the council can show that the move toward TVF&R was strictly on the basis of providing better service to the community. To not have such a hearing would send a loud signal to the citizens of Newberg that working around measures 47 and 50 and gaining the ability to raise property taxes without voter approval was also part of the motivation. I would like to thank all of you for having allowed me to meet with each of you personally to discuss this issue. I greatly appreciate that all of you were willing to give up some of your personal time to try to better understand my point of view on the issue. As I have told each of you in these meetings, you should expect that this charter amendment will be on the ballot if the annexation occurs. The council can choose to do it, or it can be left to the citizens to do it. If the council does it, you will be making a clear statement about your integrity on this issue, and you will find much better support from Newberg residents towards the annexation. I urge you to give careful consideration to this matter and to give the charter amendment a formal hearing in the near future. I thank you for this consideration of this very important issue. And on a completely different note, I looked at the whiteboard behind you and wondered just what you were expecting of Truman during his review. And I'm impressed. Thank you. And
He
can I save
didn't
that
pass,
minute
he
20
didn't
for-
pass the test.
Can I save that minute 20 seconds for another night?
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Suppy?
The minute and 20 seconds?
Yes.
No. If so, I'll submit it in writing.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Robert. And we did receive your earlier communication. Thank you.
That's what
Did you have a question or a comment?
I did. As I understand it, we're able to, you're able to submit your request in writing, and we will get back to you.
That's correct. Well, I will follow up. I've got the petition there, but I will submit tonight's. I assume my testimony tonight would be an appropriate request.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Robert. Mr. Kevin Murrug, please.
I've not been here before, so excuse me if I don't do something right. Do I hit a button? I hear you said.
No, your button's on, but we
Thank you.
need to know who you are.
My name is Kevin Murrug.
Thank you. You have
I wanna-
5 minutes.
I'm sorry?
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I want to take a minute to say thank you for letting me voice my concerns here this evening. I ask that you please keep in mind that I have never spoken in front of the council, nor am I a public speaker. I also ask that you see my passion for this topic tonight as it is a passion for the subject. It is not meant to be disrespectful to the city council members. I stand before you tonight as a native 52-year-old Oregonian and a native to the city of Newberg. I have seen a lot of changes in 52 years. Some of those changes are good. Some of those changes were not to my liking. I stand here this evening in disbelief at some of the decisions made in regards to the future of our fire department. a department I am not directly involved in, nor have I ever been a member of. I did, however, go to school here with several members of the Newberg Fire Department and other members around the state of Oregon. As a matter of fact, I can remember being in Maple Rush and the old timers bringing the fire trucks down and letting all those little rugrats climb on the different trucks. That was a great time in my life. When I was in junior high, we would go to Rennie Junior High, and we would watch the fire department face off with surrounding fire departments in the water fights. It was a great way to get cooled down on those hot August days. Then a few years back, my wife and I spent the morning shoulder to shoulder with the Newberg Fire Department on the 1-year anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. My wife and I have never attended, my wife and I have also attended several meetings, several morning eating pancakes in the old firehouse on 2nd Street, as you can see. As most people would guess, I get up, I go to work, I come home, I eat dinner, and I spend time with my wife, and I go to bed. I'm the first one to admit I don't spend any time snooping around City Hall. I was totally caught off guard by this merger. As a matter of fact, I had to ask my wife if she knew what was going on. She explained what she knew, so then I jumped online and I learned what else I could learn. This is what I just would like to have you guys hear this sentence. This is what the average working class Joe heard. Newberg had entered into a 2-year trial with Tualatin Valley Fire Department to see if our service level can be raised. At the end of the trial period, the people can vote on whether we stay with Tualatin Valley Fire Department or whether we return to Newberg Fire Department. So being an average working Joe, off to work I go, the days and weeks and months go by. In around March, I started hearing that there was a problem with the vote, or right to vote, on this important issue that had been taken away due to some unknown law. I get more concerned, but understand that there will be more public comments and the information sessions. So again, same daily routine for me. I go to work, I come home, life goes on. Then on Monday, the 22nd of May, I think, I learned at the public information meeting on the 24th of May was at 6 o'clock. 2 days notice in a meeting at 6 o'clock. Sorry, folks, but this Newberg is a bedroom community, and 3/4 of people don't even get home until 6:30 or 7. But the icing on the cake when I get home on the 25th of May, and the information sheet for the meeting is on the table, came in 1 day late. All the government agencies are pointing the finger at all the parties involved. Last I heard, the post office was to blame. However, on a positive note, another meeting is set for the 15th of June, but I wonder if this is all for show, as the final vote, from what I understand, is expected to be taken on the 19th of June. So how can any of that data really be collected and analyzed? So there are 2 items I would like you to hear me on. First, the vote of the people. I hear through the grapevine the city council may be challenged on this, and if it is true, I hope the city will lose and you will be forced by law to make this the vote of the people like it was promised in the beginning. If not, I beg the council to close your eyes for a minute and think of this decision to take away the vote of the people. Is it moral or is it unethical? You can only decide that for yourself. Second, again, look through the eyes of an everyday blue-collar worker, if you would, please. We were told that this was a 24-month, and we were being forced to make the decision now on the 11th month, 13 months sooner than we were told. I beg you, do not get pushed into a decision before the citizens of Newberg have all the facts, and for God's sakes, give us all the information. I think that we are all at fault here. The past fire chief has some blame in this. Mr. Mayor, am I out of time? Should I stop?
Oh, you got 13 seconds. 13 seconds.
At all the functions I went to this year, old-fashioned festival, pancake breakfast, and so on, never once did I hear from our fire department was in need. City councilmen, you are also at fault for the same reason. There are many ways to communicate with the people, such as community events, such as the ones I mentioned above, social media, and so on.
Can
And
you
lastly,
wrap it up now, please?
Yes, sir. And lastly, we the people are equally at fault for not staying connected with our own local government. Please don't penalize the citizens of Newberg for our mistake. I feel that this information was given to us, we could have solved this without bringing out in and outside community force. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any comments or questions for Councilman Bacon?
I just want to say thank you. You and I have had some great
Yes, we have. Thank you.
exchanges, and I appreciate that you came tonight, and you did a super job.
Thank you.
Would never known that you hadn't done it before, and I look forward to continuing our
And
dialogue.
I do too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor McKinney, your mic, please.
it is.
Oh.
It's on. I will offer to meet with you personally
Thank you.
about some of
Appreciate
these informations here. If you want to take down my number, you can call me and we'll arrange a time.
I don't have a pen, sir.
I'll give it to you right here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Farrell, please.
Good evening. I'm Mayor Andrews and Newberg City Council.
Your name, please.
Patricia Farrell.
Thank you.
I would like to request that the council take immediate action to protect the two historic Oregon white oak trees on the west side of Villa Road that will be killed by the city's road project. These trees are living history and have been living for hundreds of years, peacefully providing clean air, oxygen, acorns, and beauty since before Newberg was even on the map. These trees can live for 100 more years if we value them enough to protect them. In Oregon, we've lost over 95% of our oak habitat. They are considered an imperiled species that deserves protection. Other cities protect their trees, and Oregon white oak specifically. The local vineyards recently formed a network to save oaks on vineyards, and the Yamhill Soil and Water Conservation District has been working with landowners over the past 10 years to protect oaks. But Newberg has no tree ordinance and does not seem to value its trees, which are public assets. Trees in cities have been shown to provide a variety of benefits, including cleaner air, reducing stormwater runoff, providing wildlife habitat, and reducing stress. Trees can also slow and calm traffic. This area of Newberg is experiencing increased growth and increased traffic. Making roads wider and faster has been proven to be detrimental to neighborhoods, especially if it comes with the loss of mature trees. So now the city is going to cut down two huge Oregon white oaks to widen and flatten Villa Road to improve traffic flow through a residential area. If these trees were buildings, they would be protected by a state agency. But historic century-old trees are not protected, so it's up to us and to you to protect these magnificent trees. Protecting these trees is in keeping with your comprehensive plan goals D, E, G, and J. Retaining and protecting wooded areas, protecting air, water, and land, protecting natural, scenic, and historic resources, and maintaining the natural beauty and visual character of the city. Removing these trees would go in the face of these goals in your comprehensive plan. Mayor Andrews and councilors, please ask your city engineer and your consultants to develop an alternative plan that preserves the oaks. Until there is a Save the Oaks priority, the city will be remiss in fulfilling its duties as described in the comprehensive plan. It is not too late to do the right thing and save these historic city trees. We will not see their likes again. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Ms. Farrell? Yes,
I had a
Pat.
comment. Thank you. I love it when people come and testify before us and they've actually read the comprehensive plan. So that's thank you.
Kathy George, please.
Good evening, Mayor Andrews and City Council members and City Attorney. My name is Kathy George, and I'm here tonight to request further consideration of the oak trees on North Villa Street, currently scheduled for removal to accommodate a turn lane. I have resided in the Newberg area for 38 years. When we moved here, Newberg had a wonderful small-town rural feel. A big part of that ambience was the many old trees of various species that created what is now sometimes called an urban forest. These trees helped impart to residents and visitors an immediate feel of peace and beauty. And the skyline was beautiful. When you looked out across the town, you saw different levels of trees, different types of trees. You didn't see power lines. Over the years, many of these trees have been removed to make room for urban development. Understandably, many, but not all, were due to road changes along 99W. Nevertheless, the loss of these trees changed the skyline as we travel around and through town. More and more, as we look north and south on 99W, we see building roof lines, power lines and wires, and traffic. As our skyline changes, we become less of a welcoming rural community and more like a sprawling city. Small, imperceptible changes begin to change us as a community. Our environment affects our attitudes and our behavior. Treasuring our history creates a different community than one that only values progress as measured by new development. Old trees in a community give it roots in more ways than one. They remind us of our history, of respect for tradition, and of endurance. Preserving our old trees is as important as preserving historical structures. Ancient trees cannot be replaced. A new street tree does not have the same impact as an ancient oak. I would respectfully ask that you direct our planning department to change the questions asked when planning new streets and development from how can we save trees along the roadway to how can we plan our roadways and developments to protect the trees. Future generations will benefit from your wisdom in protecting this irreplaceable heritage. Thank you very much.
Councilor Essen?
As I recall, I proposed a heritage tree ordinance, and we have been given a report on that, and the council has not moved forward. And the two trees that I identified as needing to be saved at the time was those two trees. But, so I'm not really sure what we can do about it, but I just want to let you know I'm extremely concerned as you bring this to our attention.
Thank you. I've wondered, as I was listening to Ms. Farrell speak, as to whether or not an arterial is going to increase the speed limit. If the speed limit is not going to be increased in a community, the residential area, why are we trying to flatten it and make it easier to get through it? It seems like it's a pretty nice street right now. Maybe the turn lane could be changed in where it is so that it wouldn't take those trees out. It's just a thought. I haven't read the TSB, sorry. So, anyway, any other questions? I know it.
Councilor Bacon?
I know it. Thank you.
So one thing I was going to mention, three city managers ago, I think I've lost track of where they all lined up now. Sorry. No, it's true. We did talk about, how important trees were to us. Desk and Commons, we fought to save those trees, and the neighbors fought to save those trees. We all remember the great, where the heck did the trees go at the pool park? So I am a little disappointed that wasn't taken into consideration, or that wasn't the first consideration, because you had to know this was coming. You, Kathy, call me every time a tree is cut down. No, and that's fine. She really does. Sometimes they're not even cut down. Sometimes they're just cutting branches off, and she calls me. But, and Patricia and I worked on a Saving the Oaks video together that's on the Yamhill Watershed Stewardship Fund's website. So, I can't believe you're surprised. You would be surprised that this is happening. And I agree that we should design roads to save the trees, because these trees they'll never come back.
No. Thank you.
So thank you for being here after your long trip home from China. And thank you too, Patricia.
Thank you very much for taking the time for us.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public comment area, so we now move to consent calendar. Pleasure of the council.
Mayor?
Councilor Bacon?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve or adopt the consent calendar. Is there any further discussion? There being no further discussion and the questions called for, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Consent calendar is adopted. And with that, we will now move into the area of a public hearing. And this is, we we had adjourned our public hearing, and we're waiting for a report back from staff. So I'm going to allow staff to initiate this before we enter into a quasi-judicial hearing this evening. Drux?
Thank you, Mayor. Doug Rux, Community Development Director. So you have in your packet a report based on the direction from council to come back with findings to deny the annexation at Dutchman's Ridge. But I'm actually going to step aside from that for a moment and go to a procedural issue that has come in front of staff. Post the May 15th discussion, there were subsequent discussions amongst council members and members who testified at the hearing that occurred on May 15th. Procedurally, that information needs to be entered back into the record. So this evening, staff is modifying its recommendation that's in your report, and the new recommendation is that you continue this hearing to June 19th at 7 p.m., that you open the record on a limited basis in order to allow staff to come back with a staff report and those communications that occurred post the May 15th public hearing.
Councilor Essen, Councilor Johnson.
So we wouldn't be taking any action on this tonight?
No.
Councilor Johnson?
So I would need to make a motion to continue the public hearing to September 18th at 7 p.m. and reopen the public record to accept written and oral testimony? No?
That is incorrect, Councilor.
Okay.
The staff recommendation is that you continue the hearing to June 19th, 2017 at 7 p.m. in the Public Safety Building, that you open the record in a limited basis in order to allow the communications that occurred to be entered into the record. At that June 19th meeting, you will need to allow testimony, oral or written, to be submitted in response to those communications that occurred. Mr. Olson would write a staff report tomorrow, include that information, so you would have that available on June 19th.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
You have your motion.
I'm confused. Who made the motion and who seconded it?
The motion that has been seconded was made by Councilor McKinney
Okay,
and seconded by Councilor Johnson.
okay, thank you.
You're
Exactly
going to have
what,
to speak up,
exactly
Councilor
what
Corey.
Doug said.
I have two people that are signed up, and we will then defer those remarks until the June 19th.
You can vote? What? You can vote? Call for the question?
Is there any further discussion? None appearing. You called for the question.
Call for the question.
Question's been called for. The motion is to have the council continue the public hearing to August 7th.
No.
I'm sorry, to the 19th, and reopen the public hearing to accept written and oral testimony. On a limited basis, thank you. For the ex parte.
Do you need me to repeat the motion?
Let Doug make the motion, or the restate the
Clarify it, Doug, again, so that Sue has it.
Doug Rux again clarifying the motion. Staff is recommending that you continue the hearing to June 19th at 7 p.m. in the Public Safety Building, that you reopen the record on a limited basis to allow the communications that occurred, the ex parte communications, post May 15th, and that you allow oral and written testimony to occur on June 19th in regards to that ex parte communications.
Why don't we hear the ex parte communications now?
Call for the question.
The question's been called for. The question's out of order. The question's been called for. Everybody, let's do a division of the House, please, Sue.
Councilor McKinney?
Yes?
Councilor Bacon?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Sorry. Councilor Essen?
Yes.
Councilor Corey?
Yes.
Mayor Andrews?
Yes. 601?
6-0. There's no one. You're just a council of
One
6.
vacant, yes.
Yeah.
Motion passes. And yes, then that testimony then on the 19th.
And testimony on the 19th.
Yeah, testimony on the 19th. And with that, then we move to a public hearing regarding the state revenue sharing, and this is an administrative hearing. So we will call the administrative hearing to order for the purpose of having the approval of the state revenue sharing for 2017-18. And I'm going to call for any abstentions or conflicts of interest on the part of the council. None appearing. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Matt Zook, your Finance Director. Tonight you have before you this public hearing a request for approval of two resolutions, both pertaining to the state revenue sharing funds, and certain obligations are required for the city to begin receiving these funds on an annual basis. One is to hold public hearings before the Budget Committee and the City Council. The Budget Committee public hearing was held on May 3rd, and then tonight's public hearing before the council for the possible and proposed uses of these revenues. In addition to the requirement to hold these public hearings, the council must also, for counties that have a population greater than 100,000, such as Yamhill County, each city must certify that it provides at least 4 of the municipal services as listed in the staff report, which the city provides at least those 4. So tonight we are asking that you approve both the resolutions to testify that the city has received public comment, public hearing, held 2 public hearings, as well as certifies that it provides these services. The fiscal impact, the approved budget for 17-18 anticipates state shared revenues in approximately $1.9 million amongst 2 different funds, the general fund and the street fund. And that's my staff report.
Any questions for Mr. Zook? The question before you then, and I have nobody signed up to provide any public testimony on this one, so I'm going to open and close the oral testimony. And we ask you for your final comments. Oh, I need to find out, do we have any outside communications?
No, sir, we have not received any on this.
All right, thank you. And then I will ask you for your final comments.
Matt Zook, Finance Director. My final comment would be that the council adopt resolution 2017-3371 declaring the city's election to receive revenues through the state revenue sharing program, and resolution 2017-3372 certifying the provision of municipal services by the city of Newberg for the purposes of participation in the state revenue sharing program.
To do them together?
We could do them together. No problem with their doing them together. I'm looking to
No problem.
my surrogate parliamentarian.
Okay. Move to approve the recommendations 2017-3371 and 3372.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolutions 2017-3371 and 3372. Is there any further discussion? None appearing. Do I hear a call for the question? Question's been called for. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. And with that, then we move to hold a public hearing, and this will be an administrative hearing. This time, we are going to be holding a public hearing on the 2017-2018 city budget, and we'll be adopting Resolution 2017-3373, adopting the 2017-2018 city budget. With that, I'm going to call for any abstentions or conflicts of interest on the part of the council. There being none, staff report, please.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. Matt Zook, Finance Director. This evening, we bring before you the resolution to adopt the 2017-18 city budget. In the staff report, there is a brief detailing of the meetings that the Budget Committee held. I outline three of the changes that were made between the proposed and the approved budget. The approved budget is what was performed by the Budget Committee in its entirety. Staff is also recommending two additional changes between the approved budget and the adopted budget, and those are merely categorical changes. In conversation with our auditor, we learned that the contingencies in the Street Capital Project Fund and the Stormwater SDC Fund needed to be considered as reserves rather than contingency. And so this is a recommendation that we make before you to comply with Oregon budget law, and the council is free to do that without any further future meeting action. So we are recommending that change as well. The resolution 2017-3373 reflects this recommendation as well. The fiscal impact, the 2017-18 budget equals $97,403,431 with 144.33 full-time equivalent positions. Total appropriations equals $83,102,953 with reserves and unappropriated ending fund balances rounding out to just over $14 million. And the permanent property tax rate remains at 4.3827 per thousand of assessed value. And that's my staff report.
Question for staff? Councilor Essen?
During the budget hearings, I voted no, and that was on the issue of, I think it's $2.5 million. It's not in this year's budget, but there's $70,000 in this year's budget. My understanding is, in approving this budget, we're also approving the $2.5 million, and that my understanding is there hasn't come a resolution as to where that money's going to come from. So to go along with that position, I should note that from my understanding is we have a yes or no situation now. Is that correct? We have to either do it or not do it now, and that's the situation we're in.
City Manager?
Mayor and Council, Joe Hannon, your city manager. What the question is over the communication upgrade, and the short answer is yes. We're either in with the communication upgrade in order to continue on in the Washington County Consolidated Communication System, or we're not going to be a party to that. So, and that the total expenditure for all those improvements is going to come over about a 2.5 or 3 year period.
Follow on?
Follow on?
So the $70,000, is that putting us in a lease position? Is that what we're doing?
Matt?
It was actually approximately 90,000, but that,
Yeah.
which I believe to what you were referring to is the debt service payment that we anticipate on a lease, yes.
Right. My understanding, and maybe you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, I think is that if we were to be in a lease position, I don't know how long the lease is, that it's not possible for the lease company to hold us responsible and that we could exit that lease. Is that correct?
don't know if I can answer that question because I don't know that I would, in good faith, go into a lease without expecting to fulfill it. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I'm.
Well, I wouldn't expect that you would do that, but my question is, if we didn't come up with the money, is there an out?
City attorney, city manager.
Truman Stone, city attorney. I've not seen any proposed lease yet, so I can't directly answer that on this one. We do oftentimes negotiate, though, for a non-appropriation clause, meaning that if the council does not appropriate money to the budget, and we don't have money that we can legally spend on an item or a contract, that would be a instance where the contract could be canceled, but I haven't seen any actual lease on this specific example. And there's, people object to that term on a regular basis, and we, get in these negotiation conflicts with certain vendors who will not agree to that sort of term.
City manager?
So I think this answers your question a little bit better. You have a choice to make whether you want to go forward with the communications or not. And as I said during the budget hearings and now, in October, in August, you're scheduled for a study session which will lay out several different tools that you have. None of them are fun to think about in terms of raising additional revenue in order to pay for the communication. You could, at that time, saying, I'm sorry, none of these work out, and staff or anyone else has not come up with a good idea of how to fund it, and we could drop out of our communication system with WACA. And then we'd have to look for another source for dispatch of our officers, and we would go down that road.
Follow on?
Follow on.
Well, I suspect that were we not able to come up with the funds, we would, although what you're saying is we would look at the options, and there's a lot of options to us that we think we could have, but if we were not able to come up with funds, I could vote yes if I knew that we would have somewhere to go when we didn't come up with the money. But if not, then I would have to vote no.
Mayor?
Go.
Okay. The obvious place of where we could go, if we chose to, because we've been invited to do that, is go with the Yamhill County Communication System.
But we would have already been we've already agreed to go forward with a lease?
No, the point is that this is, so the budget is a year-long document looking towards expenditures throughout the year. So if we get to August and then the following, so you're not going to make any decisions in the August meeting. September, you're going to be asked for a supplemental budget to say, do you go forward? If you go into September and you say, no, I do not choose to do this, we don't have a place or we can't afford it, then we'll pull out of WACA, and then we won't end up spending this money. This is a line of credit, and we're anticipating what we're going to have to spend. That's why I said it's over a 3-year period, 2.5 to 3 year period. We're required, as are all the members of WACA, to pay as the money goes. The difference is they all bonded, they actually obligated themselves through a vote for their communication system. So the money's coming in, WACA's holding that, and they will pay it. Our responsibility, if we stay into that, because we didn't bond ours, there wasn't an election here, is that we're saying, yes, we choose to, and when a bill comes in, we pay it. But if we get to August or September, we'll have time, then we just say, we're out.
Any further discussion on that? Any other questions for staff at this time? I have nobody signed up to provide any oral testimony at this time, so I'm going to open and close the oral testimony. Are there any outside agencies or outside communications that we have not received?
No, sir, we have not received any testimony.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And with that, we're going to close the testimony portion, and we'd like your final comments.
Mayor and Council, a recommendation before you this evening is to adopt Resolution 2017-3373, adopting 2017-18 budget and appropriating as recommended by the Budget Committee on May 10th with the additional two changes in the Street Capital Projects Fund 18 and Fund 43, which are also reflected in this resolution as presented this evening.
You've heard the recommendation. I'm going to close the hearing. We're in deliberations. Pleasure of the council. Councilor Corey?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution number 2017-3373.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 2017-3373, adopting the 2017-2018 city budget. Is there further discussion?
Call for the question.
The question has been called for. I see no further discussion. We'll take a voice vote. So, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-1. And with that, we then move to a request for approval of a supplemental budget. This again is an administrative hearing. This is a request for approval of supplementary budget number 2 for the fiscal year 2016-17 as described in Exhibit A of this resolution. And I'm asking again, any abstentions or conflicts of interest? None appearing. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Matt Zucker, Finance Director. Tonight you have before you supplemental budget number 2 for 16-17 fiscal year. And in brief summary, the requests here, as outlined through the different funds in the report, represent minor adjustments in operations, some recategorization of special payments and reserves to follow Oregon budget law. So, as I said, there are a handful of funds here that are affected. It was brought to my attention today, a typo in the staff report regarding the building inspection fund, in that professional services would be provided by Burroughs Consulting rather than the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, and that's at the very bottom of page 1. As I said, I can go through these, or I can entertain any questions about specific recommendations on these. The fiscal impact overall decreases, the net decrease in total appropriations of $81,441, bringing total appropriations to $926,725. I butchered that one. So we are recommending that you approve supplemental budget number 2.
I have nobody signed up to provide any testimony on this oral testimony, so I'm going to open and close the oral testimony. And again, I ask, do we have any outside communications on this?
No, sir, we have not received any.
Thank you. And I'm going to close the testimony portion, and I ask for your final recommendation or final comments. Or both.
Final recommendation would be to approve supplemental budget number 2 for fiscal year 16-17 as presented in Resolution 2017-3381 and as described in Exhibit A.
Pleasure of the council. Councilor Corey?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution number 2017-3381.
It's been moved and seconded. Bacon? to adopt Resolution 2017-3381, adopting the supplemental budget number 2 for the fiscal year 2016-17, beginning July 1st, 2016, ending June 30, 2017. Is there further discussion?
Call for the question.
Hearing no further discussion, there's been a call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. None appearing, motion carries 6-0 with one absent,
At least we made good use of your
or
time.
one vacant. And with that, we are going to move to a legislative hearing. And this will be a first reading, a legislative hearing. It'll be the first reading. And this is an ordinance adopting the 2017 Water System Master Plan and incorporating the 2017 Water Master Plan into the Newberg Comprehensive Plan. And with that, I'm going to again ask for any abstentions, conflicts of interest, or objections to this jurisdiction. None appearing, we will have the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Doug Rux, Community Development Director. With me this evening is Brian Ginter from Murray Smith. So this evening, I'm going to start off with some preliminary comments on this public hearing for the 2017 Water System Master Plan. Brian's then going to go through the PowerPoint and provide the details, and then I will summarize by going through some of the findings and so forth that are in Exhibit C. So in 2015, the city embarked through the Public Works Department, through Engineering Services Department, an update to our Water System Master Plan. As noted in the report, we've been utilizing the 2002 and 2005 plans for our water system overall. There are a number of statutory administrative rule provisions that apply towards updating a water system master plan. Those are noted in your report. So we have statewide land use planning goals, we have ORS 197, we have administrative rules in Division 33, and then we also have Division 660, or I should say Chapter 660, that all apply to updating one of these plans. There was a Citizens Advisory Committee that was put together that provided guidance back to the consultant team and city staff in this process. It's listed out in your report. The basic elements that are included in the water system plan, master plan, are the sources of water, the treatment system, the storage system, the pumping system, and the primary distribution system. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Brian to kind of walk through his PowerPoint and how this plan was put together. And then again, as I said, I'll come back and finish up with elements which are Exhibit C.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through the major elements of the plan and cover a lot of this here. So first off, why prepare a water system master plan? The initial one is, as Doug said, it's required by the state of Oregon drinking water program. Every municipality is required to have a water system master plan. The plan is used to identify short and long-term needs. So capital improvements, we looked at staffing levels, policy updates, and the financial strategy you'll hear more about in the next presentation. We want to look to improve level of service to customers, including supporting economic development, providing redundancy in the water system for emergencies, and then developing appropriate standards that are used to guide developers in the city. Ultimately, what the Water Master Plan is a short-term and long-term roadmap for system improvements and investment in the utility. So the elements of the plan, we describe the existing facilities, we look at what the water need is today and in the future, and we look at a 20-year planning horizon. That's what's required by the state. We also look beyond that as well, because you're putting infrastructure in the ground that's going to last 50 to 100 years, and we want to make sure that we're sizing it right for that long-term need. We're going to establish those water service goals, identify deficiencies and identify solutions, and then ultimately look at how to pay for all of those improvements that are needed. A quick overview of the water system here. This figure illustrates for you the major components of the water system. So starting with your well field across the Willamette River in Marion County, that's your one source of water. It comes across the river in two pipes, one under the river and one hanging on the old highway bridge to the water treatment plant located at the mill property. From there, it's pumped into the distribution system and feeds two sets of storage reservoirs. You've got two in the North Valley area, one up at Corral Creek, that supply water and pressure for most of the customers in the city, and then a small area on Oak Knoll that's supplied by a small pump station. Kind of the highlights and a network of piping throughout the city. So I've got a couple figures here that describe how service pressures work. I'll go through this quickly if there's questions that can kind of come back to it. But basically, the reservoirs up on the hill provide service pressure for customers. And pressure really is just a function of the elevation of water above the location of your home or property or your water service. And so typically a reservoir needs to be located at least 100 to 120 feet above homes that it serves to provide adequate pressure. And so where homes are higher up on the hill, they need to be in another service zone supplied either by a pump station or another reservoir farther up on the hill. That ends up being one of the key issues for the city long-term as growth occurs farther up the hill, is the need to provide facilities for that. Some graphics here. Okay, so the service area of the city, we looked at the existing service area, which is essentially the city limits plus some customers on the perimeter that are master metered. Through the 20-year planning horizon, we're looking at the entirety of the urban growth boundary service to these water districts adjacent to the city. And then we also looked at the North Hills Urban Reserve area, again, because we need to look beyond 20 years and make sure that we're sizing facilities for those longer term needs. And then we make decisions about how to prioritize those based on the likelihood of when they're going to come into the urban growth boundary and into the city.
If I may, would you tell me about this area that you've identified as Sam Whitney, which I guess is the wastewater treatment area?
Oh, right here. Yep, so that's a small private water district there that the city provide water service to. And these over here on the west side as well are similar.
I don't see it behind my back.
Oh, sorry, here, I'm pointing the wrong direction. Here you go. Yes. Sorry about that.
It's yoga time.
So we look at long-term water demands, and what this graph illustrates is an important point in terms of water usage. So on the y-axis, we've got water demand in million gallons per day on the left side, population on the right side, and this is the projection of population for the area, and essentially water use follows population growth. More people in town, more water gets used. The population forecasts are consistent with Yamhill County population forecasts, and the average water demand usage is about 101 gallons per person per day. This is pretty typical of a community like Newberg. The number will continue to go down a little bit over time, but not significantly. And so what this means is, as the city grows, so will the need for water.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Johnson?
Quick question. Does that estimate, does that include any conservation efforts, or is that just kind of a national average, or how does that number come about?
So the 101 gallons per person per day is based on the city's historical average, and we looked at the last several years. It has come down quite a bit from where it was in the mid-2000s. We've seen that nationwide, that both economic conditions, but more significantly, conservation has had a huge effect on water usage, driving it down from what used to be 150 gallons per person per day down to where we're at 101. For comparison, the Portland metropolitan area, in particular the city of Portland, is down to around 70 gallons per person per day. That's about as low as you're going to see, and it's because of the more dense development. There's less outdoor water use, which has an impact. So here's looking forward at water demand needs, and the important number in this table is the one in the lower right-hand corner. So that's the maximum day demand out at the end of the 20-year planning horizon. As we plan for the water system improvements, we need to make sure that we have adequate capacity in storage, in pumping, in supply, and transmission to deliver that much water, that peak day event, that hot day in the summer, late July, when everybody's using outdoor water, sprinklers are running, those types of things. And so we see a max day demand out at the end of the planning horizon of just under 8 million gallons per day. And as we look at the North Hills Urban Reserve Area, just for comparison, we look to see, well, what additional impact can that have? And it would increase the maximum day demand ultimately by close to 1 million gallons a day additional. And more importantly, it's at a high elevation, and so it will have an impact in terms of future pressure zone development, the need for pumping and storage facilities in the long run. And then we look at the water supply system, and there's three components that we're looking at here. You've got your source, your transmission, and treatment as I described. So the wells, the piping, and then the water treatment plant. And we evaluated it for capacity. We looked at the condition of the existing facilities and what vulnerabilities exist. And then we identified improvements that were needed to achieve the desired level of service. And what we found through this analysis is that from a capacity standpoint, your existing supply system has adequate capacity to meet the 20-year demands and beyond. From a condition and vulnerability standpoint, you've got some challenges. On the source side, the wells are in good condition, but there are access challenges. When the Willamette River floods, that well field is in the floodplain, and so the wellheads have been built, the buildings have been built above grade to allow those to stay, the electrical equipment, those types of things to stay above the flood level, but access ultimately requires staff to use a boat to get to those wells, and so there's some challenges there. On the transmission standpoint, the pipe under the bridge is very new and in good condition and very secure. However,
Say that one again, please.
sorry, on the transmission, the piping under the river is very new and in very good condition and can be expected to be relied upon. However, the bridge suspended from the main is vulnerable. The main suspended from the bridge is vulnerable. It has capacity, but the bridge is an aging structure, an aging steel structure, and so there's some challenges there. The important point, though, is that the transmission main under the river has adequate capacity to meet your maximum day demand. So if you were to lose the pipe on the bridge, you still have the capacity to continue to serve your customers. And so the second pipe was built for full redundancy. And then the transmission or the treatment system is in good shape. There's some minor condition and capacity bottlenecks, but nothing of significance or concern there. And then the last item, given the vulnerability, the distance between the well field and the city, the fact that the river is between it, some of the challenges with the well field, we identified an objective to have redundant supply to meet reliability goals. The idea here was to develop an additional supply source on the city side of the Willamette River to meet the winter season average day demand, which is approximately 2 million gallons per day. And this is a common thing that many communities are looking at where there are no or limited interties with any neighboring communities. To have a second redundant source is valuable in terms of planning. So then we looked at distribution system criteria, and our criteria focus on storage. So operational, fire, and emergency are the three primary components of storage that we looked at. That we also look at pressure issues, and then primarily we're driven by, in the distribution system, fire flow requirements. Domestic demand tends to be a small component of the capacity that's needed. The fire flow component is very large. Out of that analysis, our findings related to those components were that in storage, you have adequate capacity for the 20-year horizon, for the 20-year planning horizon, but there is going to be a need for additional higher elevation storage related to the North Hills Urban Reserve Area only at the time when it comes into the urban growth boundary and then as it's annexed into the city and development occurs. Pumping capacity, again, you'll need a higher zone pump station to serve that future growth. That includes even some of the areas that are currently within the UGB at the north end of the city limits. And then water mains, there are fire flow improvements required throughout the city, main extensions for future growth. And then an important point is a routine pipe replacement program is critical. We put pipe in the ground, it lasts for a long time, it doesn't last forever. So miles and miles of pipe do need to be maintained, and that requires consistent investment so that you're keeping that renewed and upgraded. We also looked at the non-potable water system. That system has two supply sources, Otis Springs, just approximately 500,000 gallons per day of capacity, and then the recycled water system at the wastewater treatment plant, which has a 1 million gallon per day capacity now, expandable to 2 million gallons per day. There are some non-potable distribution mains that are in the ground today throughout the city, we'll see in a minute, and one current customer, the Chehalem Glen Golf Course, with a peak demand of approximately 0.6 million gallons per day. So this is the existing non-potable system. The map's kind of small here to see, but essentially you've got piping between the wastewater treatment plant and the golf course, and then there are some isolated sections of piping that have been constructed throughout the city as kind of opportunity has arisen, anticipating the potential for future expansion of the purple pipe system. So the key questions we wanted to ask and answer in our analysis was, are there potential customers if the system's expanded? Is it necessary to expand the production capacity of the non-potable source? And then how should the distribution network be routed? We were looking at potential future customers and capital piping costs. So the first thing we look at is the capacity. So the current capacity is approximately 1.5 million gallons per day. The existing demand of the one customer ranges from 0.3 to 0.6 billion gallons per day. We saw a future additional demand of approximately 0.6 million gallons per day was possible for a total demand of 1.2 million gallons per day. So the takeaway here is that the city does not need to be planning to expand the recycled water system at the wastewater treatment plant. It produces adequate capacity along with Otis Springs to meet all of the non-potable demand that's likely. The non-potable distribution system, we looked at a citywide loop system to serve all of the potential customers we saw. And so our focus here was on commercial institutional customers, large tracts of land where there's potential for a significant amount of sprinkler and irrigation usage. It's pretty inefficient in a developed city to lay new purple pipe and develop a network for non-potable usage at the residential level, street by street. So we're looking for where is the low-hanging fruit in terms of opportunity. This map illustrates all of those potential locations. The cost to develop the looped pipe network that's shown here is close to $9 million. And so that was a pretty significant cost for what was a relatively small total demand. So then we looked at a single segment of pipe instead of building all of it, what portion of this potentially could be constructed to lower the capital cost and still get a significant opportunity in terms of additional non-potable usage. And the target here is to expand the Otis Springs source to serve this new Springbrook development in the future. So the idea here is that it's greenfield, there'll be new development, there's an opportunity to lay the purple pipe as part of the development occurring. We're very close to the Otis Springs main, and so a connection there is feasible. It allows for expansion with a low capital cost, and then shifts use of the recycled water system primarily to the golf course in any development that occurs in the riverfront master plan area. So that was the ultimate recommendations for the non-potable system. And then the overall capital improvement program, the recommendations in terms of improvements in the system included, again, the redundant supply source, piping throughout the lower portion of the city. Those are upgrades for fire flow requirements. A lot of the piping that went in the ground at a time when the required fire flow was 500 or 1,000 gallons per minute. In places now where there's commercial development, those numbers can be up around 3,500 gallons per minute, so larger diameter pipe is required to meet those higher fire flows. The higher zone pump station is needed for both short-term and long-term growth, as well as a piping loop associated with that, and then beyond the 20 years, storage up in the North Hills area, and then the expansion of the non-potable system to serve the Springbrook area. This just illustrates the higher elevation service issues here, this map. So we've got transmission looping that would occur up and around on Bell Road, and then a reservoir north of Bell Road on a property that the city has identified, and then pumping improvements here and here. And again, this is all sized for that longer term need if the urban reserve area comes in, but ultimately the development will be phased based on what actually occurs there.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Jones.
Sorry, if you can go back a slide. So I read the plan, all 183 pages of it. It was awesome. Had to go to the bathroom a lot when I read it. But anyway, my question was the pump station.
Yes.
The single pump station that's 2 blocks from my house. The timing of increasing that pump versus the North Valley Reservoir turning on. It's not, you can tell I'm a water guy. How does that timing look? Because I was just wondering, are we 5 years apart? Are we 2 years apart? What's the nexus of that reservoir coming online versus the pump being expanded?
So,
Or did I totally misread it?
No, that's okay. I'll answer part of it, and I might ask Doug to weigh in on another piece of that question. But the Oatnell pump station replacement.
Which pump station are you speaking to?
So this is the one.
Thank you.
Yep. So that pump station will need to be upsized and or replaced as development occurs within the current urban growth boundary. So the potential there is high for that to occur soon. The reservoir up here on Bell Road, however, is very long-term. And so constructing that storage is going to be.
Which one?
This would be, sorry, this Reservoir 1, Bell Road Reservoir here. That's a very long-term project in comparison, and it is going to be largely dependent on whether or not the urban reserve area is brought into the UGB. I don't know if you could speak to the timing of that at all.
Doug Rux again. Councilor Johnson, so as Brian had indicated, we have lands that are already within the urban growth boundary that are above that 300-foot elevation that could be brought in, are either in the city limits or proposing to be in the city limits, or could be in the city limits in the future. So that pump station, and I believe, it's somewhere in our 5-year CIP in that horizon, that pump station may be needed. The other pump station down on Bell is really driven by what happens in the urban reserve area. So as we look through the urban growth boundary expansion process and make some determinations what may be needed, there may need to be that pump station there, but you might not need the reservoir yet. It's when you look out further, when you kind of take this whole 500-acre urban reserve area, if that was to all be brought in and developed, then you would need that reservoir up north of Bell Road.
And that's why you don't have counselors do value engineering.
In addition to the construction project we listed, there are 2 additional planning studies that were recommended out of this plan. Looking at the treatment plant and the transmission main slope stability, there are a history of slides in that area, and so we recommend that the city look into that a little further and make sure that there aren't greater concerns associated with that, since it is a critical facility for you. And then the other piece is the seismic resilience study. So the Oregon Resilience Plan recommended that all water systems complete a seismic resilience study. So essentially looking at what are the risks to the water system during an earthquake, what are your critical facilities, what's the backbone piping in the system, and then recommending system improvements to mitigate risks. And that typically ends up being a 50-year CIP, because if improvements that we recommend for capacity needs are expensive, the look at what it's going to take to make for a resilient system is going to be very expensive, and it's going to require significant investment over a long period of time. So this is a summary of our proposed CIP broken down into the components. So in the 5-year window, we've got the start of looking for and developing the redundant supply source, the pump station improvements to the west, a significant amount of distribution main that's required both for renewal of the system and for growth, the planning studies, and then the start of the non-potable system. The biggest chunk of the CIP is in this first 5-year window, a little over $11 million. And then it tapers off in the 10 and 20-year window with additional improvements, a total estimated project cost of almost $22 million, an average of just over $1 million over the 20 years per year. But it is front-loaded with improvements that are needed to serve customers and address existing deficiencies. So how does the CIP get funded? One of those ways is through system development charges. That'll be the next topic this evening, and then also water rate evaluation. And so there was a financial analysis that was done as part of this plan, and there'll be ongoing process in line with your typical water rate evaluation timeline and process. With that, entertain any questions?
Trying to absorb it all. Councilor Essen?
Well, I just, I was involved in that committee, and I want to thank Karen and the committee and all the people involved. I can tell you there was a lot of input from various different agencies that were going to be affected, or different departments, and it was a lot, they did a really great job, and I'm very happy for the report. I see it's going to work, I think, and so I'm in support of it.
Continue.
Doug Rux again. So, council members, I would refer you to Exhibit B in your packet, and this is to Ordinance 2816.
Exhibit which?
B. Exhibit B is in boy, it would be on page 213, the paper copy.
No, it's on page 2.
Well, or page 2. It depends upon how you're looking at your packet. So these are the findings that address the water master plan. So the first section of this deals with statewide planning goals and Newberg comprehensive plan. So the first one is addressing citizen involvement. So as I mentioned earlier, we had a citizens committee. There was a public hearing that was held in front of the planning commission. The public hearing that's being held tonight, and the information was also up on the city's website. The next was dealing with air, water, and land resource quality, and staff concluded that we were meeting that. We were developing an efficient system that was serving the existing population and the projected population in the community in the future. We addressed the economic development goals from statewide and in the Newberg plan, and having a adequate water system to be able to provide water to residents as well as commercial and industrial businesses to further our economy. We were looking at energy, so having a system that is efficient in its routing and distribution, even in the water treatment plant, some of the upgrades and so forth, and make the plant run more efficiently. Public facilities is the big one, and that's statewide planning goal 11, and that every community has to have a public facilities plan. And so the water master plan is a subset of the overall public facilities plan. So the key point here is that public facilities plans have to be a part of your comprehensive plan. And so part of the action this evening is actually referencing that and incorporating it into the comprehensive plan. As I mentioned earlier, ORS 197 really wasn't applicable to this one, but Oregon Chapter 333 deals with the safe drinking water provision. So the plan was put together for that. There's actually a step that will follow the council's decision. If the council approves this plan, it actually has to go to the Oregon Health Authority. There's a review process that has to occur there before we get to a final plan. And then the most lengthy portion of the findings is really dealing with Oregon Revised Chapter 660, what is the public facility plan. So staff went through and addressed each one of them by definitions, by all of the requirements. By that particular goal, we found that we met each and every one. So with that, then I should always conclude with staff would enter the entire staff report, all of the attachments, the ordinance, and its exhibits into the record. That way you didn't have to read every word. That would conclude staff's presentation.
Are you going to address Exhibit C or not?
I can, Mayor. Exhibit C is the proposed changes. So there's a track changes version and there is a clean version. So you'll see on page 1 of Exhibit C, we've added in a new section 8, which is a reference to the 27 Water System Master Plan, and it'll be under a separate cover. So we already have the comp plan. It's just kind of like an appendage off of the comp plan. We clarified under policies number 1 on all facilities, and we worked the words a little bit by having the water master plan, the wastewater master plan, and the storm drainage master plan, and the design and construction standards. So all of these pieces altogether go towards our public facilities system. Under subsection F, we clarified that for maximum efficiency for existing urban facilities and services will be encouraged through infill of vacant land within the urban growth boundary. So this kind of gets to the efficiency of the land that we already have and how we utilize it. Under section 2, sewers and water policies on subsection A, we went back and looked at our other provisions in the municipal code where we have requirements that you need to connect public sewer and water systems to be able to develop. And so instead of using the word will, here we use the word shall, because we have implementing regulations that say you shall do this. So those are the connections between comprehensive plan goals and implementing regulations. Under section 2, we clarified, because we do not have an engineering manager, but we do have a city engineer. And then if you turn to page 4 of Exhibit C, again, we reference back the new information about the 2017 Water Master Plan, so it incorporates it in as part of the comprehensive plan in order to meet the division, chapters 660 requirements.
Questions, comments for staff at this time? I have nobody signed up for any public testimony on this one, so I'm going to open and close the oral testimony. Do we have any outside communications?
No, sir, I have not received any.
Thank you. So I'm going to close the testimony portion, and I'm looking for the close of, I've closed the testimony, I'm sorry, and I'm looking for your final comments and recommendations.
Thank you, Mayor. Doug Rux again. Staff recommends the council adopt ordinance 2017-2816.
Now, I suggest to you that this is a first reading. So if you want to proceed, you're going to need to waive the second reading. Councilor Bacon?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we waive the second reading.
It's been moved and seconded, Corey, to waive the second reading. Is there any further discussion? None appearing. Do I hear a call for the question? Call for the question. Question's been called for. This is the waiving of the second reading of ordinance 2017-2816. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Now to the ordinance 2017-2816. Pleasure of the council.
Mayor,
Councilor Bacon.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 2017-2816.
Second.
And read by title only.
You got it in.
I saw the panic on Truman's face. And
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt on second read. We've waived the second reading. Been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution 2017-2816, adopting an ordinance adopting the 2017 water system master plan and incorporating the 2017 water master plan into the Newberg comprehensive plan. This is a roll call vote. Read by title only.
You kind of just did it for me there, Mayor. Ordinance number 2017-2816, an ordinance adopting the 2017 Water System Master Plan and incorporating the 2017 Water Master Plan into the Newberg Comprehensive Plan.
I didn't want to deny you. City Recorder?
Counselor Corey? Counselor McKinney?
Yes.
Counselor Bacon?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Essen?
Yes.
Mayor Andrews?
Yes. Motion passes 6-0 with one vacancy. Thank you very much. And with that, we move to a resolution to approve water system development charge methodology and a decrease in the charge. And, well, hi, Debbie.
what did you say?
This is an administrative hearing, and I am going to ask that if there are any conflicts of interest or abstentions from the council on this one.
Why does Deb always have to be last?
I'm not gonna go into that one. None appearing, that's the only conflict of interest I hear. None appearing, may we have the staff report? Identify yourselves, please.
Karen Hoffman, City Engineer. Good evening, Mayor, Council. With me is Deb Glardy, who is our consultant on the water SDC methodology. So we'll work this a lot like the previous one. I'll do a couple of preliminary remarks. We'll have Deb give the PowerPoint, and then I'll finalize it out. So good evening. As part of the Water Master Plan update that you just adopted, the SDC methodology and fees were also evaluated and updated. The Oregon Revised Statutes and the Newberg Municipal Code allow the methodology to be changed by resolution of the City Council, and so that's what we're here tonight to do. They do dictate that the methodology needs to be available for public inspection. We have to maintain a list of persons who have made a request for the information and make sure that they're notified of that. So we did notify people that we were making this change 90 days ahead of, actually it was February 1st when we made that notification, so more than 90 days. And that we had to have the methodology available 60 days prior to the public hearing, and again, that was available on March 2nd. We did talk with the Home Builders Association and several other developers, and there were no concerns raised with this methodology and fee. So with that, I will turn it over to Deb.
Oops. Deb Glardy. So my presentation is very short. Just hit the highlights here.
Thank you, that was good. We're picking on Debbie.
So the methodology is basically the same methodology as you have now. We've just updated for the project list that was identified in the master plan. And Oregon law also allows that you can recover the costs of existing facilities to the extent that there is available capacity in the system. And so it includes both the cost of the existing system as well as the planned improvements, as well as costs of complying with the statutes like developing a master plan and project list, my time to help you with your methodology, etc. So as we've done in the past, so you have the two components, and the reimbursement fee and the improvement fee, and to determine the costs that you're trying to recover from the SDCs, we look at each function in the system individually to see what its capacity is and how improvements expand that capacity and how much of that capacity is needed for growth. You can see the total cost that we're trying to recover is about $31 million. About half of that is the capital portion of the capital improvement plan. Brian mentioned that the total CIP is about $22 million. Is that what it was? And so about 15 million of which is SDC eligible because it does relate to meeting the needs of future growth. Not all the costs are, as he talked about a lot. Some is redundancy and planning, things that benefit both existing development as well as future growth. So we go through that allocation process, determine the costs of the future improvements that are related to growth, and then again look at that available capacity in the existing system. So that $31 million total translates into an updated SDC for the potable system of $48.96 for the smallest meter size in the EDU or equivalent dwelling unit. You can see that we have split the SDC into two based on the service being provided. These are interrelated. Both systems help to meet your future water demands, but the non-potable system, there aren't the same pumping and storage and upper elevation facilities that benefit that system. So the components do not include those elements. So we have two fees, the $48.96 for a potable customer, and then the non-potable base fee is $32.16. So you can see the full SDC schedule here. As in the past, it's assessed based on the meter size, which relates to the potential capacity requirements of a new customer. So it's an equitable and defensible approach. And it's based on factors, the hydraulic capacity is determined by American Water Works Association standards. So, to summarize, the revised fee of $48.96 is a reduction from the current SDC. Notably, we've seen all across the region, all across the country, reduced water demands for customers, and that translates into pushing out, deferring the need for major capacity increases in treatment. So your supply is limited to some redundancy, but not a whole new plant and additional large storage reservoirs, as was included in the prior plan. That has a very significant impact on the costs, and therefore, without those additional costs that were previously included, there is a slight reduction in the fee. Even still, a fee that's close to $5,000 per equivalent dwelling unit is very much in line with what other communities are charging for water SDCs. And the new SDC that's slightly reduced for the non-potable system recognizes that those customers receive a different level of service in that they don't require all the same facilities and benefit from as the potable customers. That concludes my presentation.
Councilor Johnson?
So I'm going to ask some dumb questions, and I apologize ahead of time. Number one, so I'm a residential customer. I'm paying the $48.96.
Correct.
Okay. I was adding those two together. I was adding the potable and non-potable together.
Oh, don't do that.
No.
I know. So.
Actually, Counselor Johnson, for you, you would have to pay both.
Oh, okay.
But
'Cause I asked too many
everybody
questions.
else doesn't have to.
Okay.
Would you like to try that again?
Follow-on. I'm just wondering how much this follow-on's going to cost me now. So my other question was, and I might be treading on thin ice, so just slap me if I'm going down a rabbit hole here.
I'll do it for you.
So in the Water Master Plan, we saw that the non-potable system to build it out was like $9 million, right? And change, right? 9.8, I think is what it was.
That's what we showed for the entire loop system.
Yeah. So could we take the savings and put that on the non-potable system and then build it out?
The savings.
Well, so we're reducing the residential SDC, yeah? And so couldn't we keep that amount and then increase the system to loop the non-potable all over town?
Well, the SDC, based on, we are there are statutes that limit that provide a framework for how we approach this. And this fee is what has been identified to meet the needs of the recommended capital improvement plan, which doesn't include that full cost. I mean, if the full cost were in there, it would be something higher, we can't just arbitrarily set the fee at the current fee without having some basis for doing that, and we haven't run those numbers.
So if that 9 million was in there, then we could potentially fix the formula it would adjust the formula to pay for the expansion of the non-potable system. This is more of a question of how this works versus wanting to expand the non-potable. I just want to make sure I understand how the formula works.
Yeah, so Karen Hoffman, city engineer. So a couple things. Excuse me, in the past, the SDC was one SDC for all of the entire system. What we did this time was we broke it out because based on a decision that the council made back in September, I think, of what the non-potable plan would look like. We used that to lay out what the CIP would be. And then there was a very limited number of people who were going to benefit from that non-potable system. So we decided to, when we did this methodology, we split those costs out because a residential customer up in the foothills area isn't necessarily going to be, at least right now, is not going to benefit to that non-potable system. So for them to pay for that system seemed not quite equitable. So that's why we broke it out the way we did. So if we had put them back in together and spread those costs over everybody within the city, the numbers would be different.
Okay, and then one last question, and this is just a general non-potable follow-on, if that's all right. So when residential customers say, I'm paying for this non-potable system, now we can say, not really.
That would be correct.
Okay, thank you. So not only did we lower the SDC, we also took the burden off the residential customers that most likely won't use it.
At least the existing residential customers, correct.
Thank you.
And let me make one other note, is that as the Riverfront Master Plan moves forward and the Newberg 2030 discussion, obviously the Water Master Plan will have to be updated, and the methodology for the SDCs would obviously have to be looked at again. If we looked at a major expansion of the non-potable system, say, as part of either one of those things, we would obviously be looking at a different CIP and then therefore possibly a different methodology. So those can still come up.
Follow on that one, if I may. Can you discriminate in customers for the non-potable versus potable? If you have a developer that's going in and wants only to use the potable or non-potable, would that person then, would that industry be the only one to have to pay the SDC?
So the SDC is based on if they need a meter or want that service. So if a non-potable customer needed a 2-inch meter for non-potable service, then they would pay.
So we do have it there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
17044, is that what it was there?
Thank
Follow
you.
on.
I just wanted to close that loop.
Yeah.
Councilor McKinney.
So the system is adaptable to meet the need. And I take it from the conversation about why we haven't completed the loop is that we haven't established the need for the loop to be completed because we're exceeding the millions of gallons, per minute that we need or per day that we need. So, and nobody's a bigger proponent than I am of purple pipe, I don't care if you give it away,
That's correct.
Don't put that everywhere. Continue.
That's all we have, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Further questions or comments? None appearing, then we'll move into the public testimony. I have nobody signed up to provide any oral testimony in this particular case, so I'm going to open and close the oral testimony. Do we have any outside communications?
No, sir, we have not received any.
All right, then I'm going to close the testimony portion of the hearing, and your final comments and recommendation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Karen Hoffman, City Engineer. Staff's recommendation is to adopt Resolution 2017-3376, which is approving the water system development charge methodology and decreasing the charge.
Pleasure of the council.
I recommend, I move that we pass Resolution 2017-3376.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution or pass resolution 2017-3376 to approve the water system development charge methodology and decrease the charge. Is there any further discussion?